Well, hi, my name's Jason, and I'm part of Real Talk Johnson County. The whole goal for us is to promote healthy conversations and awareness of diversity in Johnson County through storytelling. So today I have with me a couple of good friends, Glenn and Jantina Anderson. We've been friends for several years. Our girls used to go to school together, so we've survived some Chuck E. Cheese birthday parties at some Church League girls basketball together. And I'm just thankful to have you guys here sharing a little bit of your story and what you've experienced along the way. So why don't you each introduce yourself just a little bit?
Okay. My name is Glenn Anderson, and I'm just like you. I'm surviving being a dad, surviving being a parent, just kind of making our way through life. I work here at Greenwood Christian School, so I'm around kids, elementary school kids, most of my day, and in the evening I got to raise my two kids at home. So.
And I'm Jantina Anderson, Glenn's wife. I'm a native of Indiana, so grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and currently reside here in Greenwood. Professionally, I work in human resources. Academically, I'm currently pursuing a degree. And as Glenn mentioned, we have two daughters who keep us very active during the week and weekend. So very glad to be here.
Cool. Well, we're talking specifically with you guys about the idea of systemic racism. So just tell me about your teen years growing up and your experiences, I guess, in that area.
As far as my teen years, it's interesting that you would start there because I would say probably as a teenager, I did not, I guess, feel systemic racism. It was just kind of what I had grown up in. So it was kind of the norm, the natural thing that was happening. I think as I began to leave high school and start to think about college and going to the college years is when I started to realize the limitations that I had to fight my way through to move on to the next level.
I had to think about your question a little bit. I guess growing up in Fort Wayne, I experienced the difference between attending a private school and living in a neighborhood, I guess some would call it an urban area. So for me, I didn't necessarily know, but looking back on it, I could definitely point to different experiences that would underscore or kind of highlight racism. So for instance, when I first became interested in playing in the band, I chose the French horn, which is probably an uncommon instrument for anyone to choose. But at the time when choosing it, the individual who was there assisting us explained that, no, you probably really don't want to choose that instrument because in order to play it and to be really good at it, you have to have a certain embouchure. And because your lips are fuller, you likely won't be able to achieve that embouchure. So I didn't understand the implications of that message at the time, but my mother was there with me and insisted that if this is the instrument that you want to play, then this is the instrument that we'll take home with us today.
Wow.
So, and that was probably in, I think maybe 4th or 5th grade.
I would say the most afraid that I would say I was about would have been junior year, so 16 years old. And at the point in time, this would have been 89. This was a time where California gangs and things like that had begun to move into the Midwest, move into Wichita in particular. And something that happened, and the suspect description that went out was young black male from about 5'4" to 6'2", high top fade haircut, and that was it. There wasn't very many young men, black young men in Wichita, that description did not fit at that point in time. And so, you just get nervous about doing anything. And, being 16 years old, we would go out on the weekends. We would, go to the teenager club and hang out and things like that. But when that description went out, Mom and Dad made sure all of us stayed at home. Whatever we were going to do, we did at somebody's house until it had blown over.
Wow.
So that was probably the moment I remember being afraid and really feeling how systemic racism can draw that fear out of a community.
where do you feel like along the way when you maybe bumped into walls in the process, where did you find strength to get through and break through some of those things?
I would say I found strength in the black church. I was quote unquote raised in a church. I don't remember a time in my youth where I wasn't quote unquote the church kid in my friend circle. I was in the youth group from. I remember being 5 years old and singing songs and doing Christmas speeches in front of the church. And one of the messages that I got from the church was, always empowering, self-empowerment. We're here for you. If something needs to happen, we will organize and make that happen.
I went to an HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia, so Clark Atlanta University. That community was very powerful for me to just be able to be around a large group of black students who had similar experiences, who looked like me, who may have had similar family values and things of that nature. It just really helped, I guess, strengthen the confidence that I had for myself and what I was able to achieve, as well as the professors there. They came in and they were another community. So community has been a big part.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a great segue. Based on all of those things you guys have each experienced, what would you tell a teenager today who was kind of making their way through all of this? And it could be a teenager who's a person of color, or it could be a teenager who's white living in Johnson County and still trying to sort through how they exist and interact and all that. But what would you, based on what you've learned, what would you tell today's teenager in Johnson County?
Today's teenager in Johnson County, I think I would say find community.
Hang on to who you are. Hang on to your authenticity. Some people call it your secret sauce, but it's just one of those things that at the end of the day, the difference that you bring, or that the difference in who you are, is what is so valuable. Because no one else can do that. No one else can show up the way that you do. No one else can view a question or a problem the way that you do. And depending on the situation or the circle, that's that one kind of magic thing that people are going to gravitate to. Now, there will be other groups that don't value it, and that's okay.
Well, amidst so many things going on in our culture these days, right? I mean, we've got civil unrest here and there. We've got race relation issues. We have so many. There's so much to focus on the negative these days. But I guess I'd love to hear, where do you see hope? I mean, as you look to what you experience today, what your kids experience today, or what you see in the future on the way, where do you see some positivity? Where do you see some hope? What makes you look toward the future and say, okay, I think it could get better than it is right now?
So I have no hesitation with this one. I would say the youth. And I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. Our daughters, they teach me, and I don't want to speak for Glenn, but they teach me so much. I mean, even when I think that, I've kind of got something figured out, or I'm maybe a little more progressive or liberal in a certain way than others, there are always instances where they'll say, no, mommy, people aren't like that anymore. That's just who they are, and you should accept that, and you can't say this or you can't say that. You should say it this way. And it's like, oh, well, okay, you're right. You're exactly right. Thank you for, holding me accountable and bringing that to my attention.
I think the youth are definitely leading at an earlier age than what we did. I mean, at 13 years old, I might have led, my youth group. But we have 13-year-old kids now leading movements for the whole society that they are a part of. And it's phenomenal to see. And I think that helps at the family level, which I believe is where any systemic change is going to start anyway. Right? It's going to start at a family table, and then that's going to go to the next family's table. And before you know it, the whole society has changed.
So let's say a teenager stumbles upon this video series. Maybe they're watching online or they're watching in a classroom at their school. What's one thing you would love for a Johnson County teenager to know today that would make a difference when they think about systemic racism?
One thing that they should know about systemic racism: number one, it's real. Number two, you will run up against it. And when you run up against it, it will either cause you to become privileged or it will cause you to become discriminated against. And at that point in time is when you can decide who you are and who you want to be.
I would encourage the student not to forget their power. I mean, to Glenn's point, yes, it's real. Yes, it's going to happen. I would let them know that it's not always overt. So it's not always something that's kind of blatant and in your face. There are many subtleties that occur that still kind of reek of racism. But when facing it, I think it's important for them to understand they have power. They don't have to take it or settle for it. There are many different ways they can exercise that power. I think that's important to know too. It doesn't always exist in a march or, I don't know, raising voices or advocating for things. Power could simply be drawing a picture or writing a poem and sharing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be very powerful too, because it catches someone's attention. There's a conversation that occurs, and either someone becomes more aware or change happens, or you plant a seed and that person will reflect on that and maybe think differently later. So I would just really encourage them to remember their power.
Well, thank you both. I love you both. I'm so thankful for you guys and just our family's relationship, and that you take a little bit of time to be with us. We thank you for tuning in and taking some time to watch this. Our hope is that the conversation doesn't end as the video does. Our whole goal as a group is to help kind of spur on those good, healthy conversations and this awareness of the diversity that we have around us and how it continues to grow in Johnson County. So our challenge is just to go and have a conversation with somebody today that might expand your horizon and might help them to learn more as well.